I'm here at the headquarters of the Gideon's International in Nashville, Tennessee, because I brought them a little gift here in this box that I'd like to leave them. The Gideons themselves as an organization have left a lot of their own gifts around the world. They're the largest distributor of free Bibles, and they've placed over 2 billion of them in schools, military barracks, and of course hotels all around the globe. And at the front of every printed version of the Gideon Bible, there's Gideon's name and a jar and a lamp, coming from the infamous Gideon story where he drives out a much larger army just using 300 guys who don't have any weapons and they're armed only with jars and lamps. So if a person who's brand new to the Bible comes by and sees these symbols, wonders where they're from, and flips to the Gideon story, they might have some surprises. This comes from Judges chapter 8. Then Gideon made the garment into a shrine and set it up in his home city. And all of Israel prostituted itself there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. Wait, how did we let this guy onto the cover of 2 billion Bibles? So Gideon's a character who only appears in the Bible for a few chapters, but for some reason, we really latched onto him. We make action figures out of him. We put his name on the side of our buildings, and if you've been to like youth group or more than one men's breakfast, I'm sure you've heard this story talked about from like an inspirational angle. Something along the lines of,
"And the Lord gave a tremendous victory to Gideon. But more important still, he learned that one man multiplied by God's power equals victory no matter what the odds."
Where is God's champion? Who'll be the one to stand like Gideon? I'll be that man.
in their mission statement, the Gideon's International explain their link to the story this way. Gideon was a man who was willing to do exactly what God wanted him to do, regardless of his own judgment as to the plans or results. This is the standard that the Gideon's International is trying to establish in all its members. Each person ready to do God's will at any time, at any place. However, if we read the full story, we might think twice before turning Gideon into some kind of mascot or action hero. So let's plot a graph here where this represents time and then this represents how the character is doing in the story, like highs and lows. And I think a lot of times when we think about the story of Gideon, we talk about it like it's the movie Rudy, where we have this like flawed but pretty likable protagonist, but he's not the smartest, so he has some setbacks, but he's able to overcome them and ultimately achieve something incredible. So how does the Gideon story compare? Where does he start out? Does he start out doing pretty good? Does he start out neutral? Well, how do we say rock bottom? Because at the start of the Gideon story, he's actually hiding in a wine press threshing wheat because he's afraid that the invading Midianite army is going to come and take it away. I guess like the grasshoppers in A Bug's Life. So he's hiding in a wine press. He's the youngest son from the weakest clan in Israel. It's really rock bottom. But some good news here, because an angel from the Lord shows up and says, "Times are changing, Gideon, and I want to use you to do it." So things are looking up, huh? Well, not really, because Gideon refuses to believe it's actually a messenger from the Lord until he agrees to show him a sign. And spoiler alert, this whole story is just going to ping pong back and forth between these two poles. God asks Gideon to do something, and Gideon hesitates, like right here. The angel says, "Here's your first mission, Gideon. There's this nearby altar to a false god, and I want you to destroy it." But we read, because Gideon was too afraid of the people of the town to do it by day, he waited to do it by night. Then again on the second mission, God says, "Okay, it's time to put together some guys for an army." And Gideon says, "Wait, I don't believe you. If this is something you really want me to do, can you give me a sign with like the fleece and the dew," which God provides? But Gideon still doesn't believe. He requests a second sign. Somehow, through all this hesitation and disbelief, Gideon does end up putting together a huge army, but God says, "That's way too many people. I want you to trust me here," and sends most of them away. And then on the night of the big attack here, when God says, "Okay, it's go time, go attack the Midianites," Gideon doesn't obey immediately. First, he has to go check out the camp for himself to make sure it's all clear. And then, yeah, he does end up sending in the charge with the 300 guys, with the jars and the lamps, and they end up driving out a much bigger army. But then immediately after, he ends up recalling all the guys that God already had him send away. And he starts chasing the Midianite army, which is not something that God told him to do. And then he ends up torching a nearby Israelite village to the ground because they don't want to help him out on this revenge quest. And then finally, there's the idol that he sets up in his hometown, which is the place we read about at the beginning, where all of Israel prostituted itself. So, unless we just zoom in to this one part of the story and forget about everything else, we really can't see this as some sort of heroic, Rudy narrative. It's got to be trying to do something else.
When you read the fleece story in the larger context of the Gideon story, the conflict for you, the reader, is, oh man, he lacks faith again? When is this guy ever going to get it? Then the Gideon story takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
Because he's this anti-hero. The whole story is portraying the need for a leader who won't be like Gideon, but who will truly have radical faith.
So that's Tim and John from the Bible Project, who, in addition to doing an animated video on every book of the Bible, also have an amazing podcast series on how to read the Bible like Jewish literature. We love to look for heroes in our movies and media, but what I picked up from this podcast is that comes from a very Greek tradition of storytelling. In contrast, Jewish literature is almost set up to prevent us from projecting ourselves onto the characters that way. The trajectories of David, Solomon, Moses, all kind of keep us at an arm's length from wanting to be like them. But we love heroes enough that sometimes that doesn't stop us from trying to twist some of these stories into inspiring narratives anyway, and really project a Greek style of hero onto a Jewish style of literature. And in the case of Gideon, that impulse can really lead us to some strange places, even to miss out on the point of the story entirely.
I'll be that man.
So what do we do? How do we get past seeing the Bible as a series of hero stories to be personally inspired by? Well, first, I can't recommend that Bible Project podcast enough, but also I have an idea of my own. And I think we can actually keep the action figures. We might just have to modify them a little bit. My idea is to do a translation of the Bible where we put the word Darth in front of every character's name. So here we have Darth Gideon. There you go, little guy. So reading this Bible story would be something like this. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the tree which belonged to Joash, while his son, Darth Gideon, threshed wheat in the winepress. I kind of like the vibe of that. And this is just one Bible story. I wonder how many others we've completely missed the meaning of by turning them into action figures.